Welcome to the Pulsating Biology, where we have already covered the topic nutrition and animal, and this is the revision video for that chapter. We begin this chapter with a very basic topic, and the revision is going to be also the same. That we are going to start with the mouth and the buccal cavity. So when you talk about the mouth and the buccal cavity, that is the area of the ingestion where the intake of food basically takes place. Where that includes the three major sub things. That is the tongue, that is the teeth, and that consists of the salivary glands. When we talk about the tongue is majorly responsible for forming a bolus. Bolus is a round structure that is found inside your mouth whenever you ingest any kind of a food that helps you swallowing that substance, that undigested substance. And then the teeth. Teeth are basically responsible for breaking down of the food into smaller molecules. When you talk about the salivary glands, there are basically some sorts of the salivary gland that include the parotid gland, sublingual gland. These are the kinds of the gland that are present on the various parts of the around the jaw area. For example, the sublingual gland is present below the tongue, whereas the parotid gland is present beside the ear. It also consists of another part that is known as the jaws. We have two kinds of jaws, the upper jaw and the lower jaw. What is the difference between an upper jaw and a lower jaw? Basically, an upper jaw is a fixed jaw, whereas a lower jaw is a movable jaw. You can always move the lower jaw, whereas the upper jaw is not movable, it is a fixed one. When you talk about the teeth, let's come on to the what kinds of teeth are present in our mouth and what are the total number of teeth that are present in a human body. So the total number of teeth that are present in a human body is 32. And how they are basically classified? They are classified into four kinds of teeth: the incisors, the canines, the molars, and the premolars. These are the four kinds of teeth that are present in order to make up the almost 32 teeth that are present in a human body. Now, let's talk about what are the major functions when it comes to the mouth and the buccal cavity. So, since the mouth contains tongue, that means that consists of the taste buds. Taste buds mean that helps us analyze the kind of a taste that an ingested material that has. That consists of some sort of glands that help us recognize about the taste buds, and that glands also release some sort of a saliva that basically moistens the food and helps it to be more swallowed very easily. Next, when you talk about the saliva, we know that saliva consists of a mucin, and mucin is used for moistening the food. That it moistens the food that helps it to be swallowed very easily. Third is the teeth. The teeth in the buccal cavity basically helps in the mastication. That means in the breakdown of the undigested material into smaller molecules. Then when you talk about the salivary glands majorly release salivary amylase. Salivary amylase is one of the major enzymes that is released in the mouth and the buccal cavity that helps us to convert the starch into maltose. For example, if you have taken any piece of a bread, so the piece of a bread is an example of starch that is going to be broken down into maltose with the help of salivary amylase right in your mouth and the buccal cavity. Last, you have the tongue. When you talk about the tongue, the purpose of a tongue is basically to form a bolus. Bolus is a round structure that helps you to swallow the food particle very easily and helps it to be released to the pharynx. These are the basic functions of the mouth and the buccal cavity, where the ingestion of food or the intake of food basically takes place. Then let's talk about the holozoic nutrition. When you talk about the holozoic nutrition, most of the organisms consist of the holozoic nutrition. That means the ones that are ready but made complex or organic in ingested food. That is obtained from the other organism. The food that is obtained from the other organism and then is digested in the organism's body, that is termed as the holozoic nutrition. This consists of several steps that includes the ingestion, that includes the digestion, that includes the absorption, assimilation, and the egestion. We have already talked about the ingestion, that is, the ingestion takes place in the mouth and the buccal cavity, which means the intake of food material. Whenever there is an intake of food material, we say that the body has ingested the food particle. Then let's come on to the digestion. That food particle that was ingested by the body is breaking down into smaller molecules that we say is termed as the digestion. Once the digestion has taken place in the stomach, then it goes into the small intestine and large intestine. Basically, in the small intestine, what occurs is the absorption. That is, the substances that are not required, that is passed on to the large intestine, and others one are added into the blood. And then it comes to the assimilation. Assimilation means that the new products are formed from the products that are basically absorbed into the blood. Then the last process is the egestion. The egestion means the excretion outside the body. That takes place at the annals of, that is the last part of the gut. This is the holozoic nutrition, and all of these steps basically makes the nutrition complete by starting from the ingestion of food to the excretion of food, that is termed as the egestion. After the mouth in the buccal cavity and its function, we are going to talk about the esophagus. What is an esophagus? Esophagus is also termed as the food pipe. This food pipe is long, it is hollow. This is a long and a hollow tube, which is basically a passage for all the food particles that helps us to be conveyed the food particles from the mouth to the stomach. This is a passage for the all the food particles, whether they are small, whether they are large, food pass on the food particles from the mouth to the stomach. Whenever he comes up with the question that what is that one part where the digestion does not take place but is included in the digestion, we say that esophagus is that one part. After that, we have the layers of the gut that helps us enter into the stomach. So there are four layers of the gut. There are serosa, there's muscular layer, the submucosa, and the mucosa. Let's talk about the each layer in a much more detail. When you talk about the serosa, it is the outermost layer, and the mucosa is the innermost layer. The mucosa consists of all kinds of glands that helps us release the secretions. When you talk about the submucosa, it consists of all sorts of the blood vessel, and it consists of all kinds of the blood vessels, and it is richly supplied by the blood. The third layer, which was termed as the muscular layer, as the layer itself tells us that it is a muscular layer, that means it consists of the multiple muscles. So it consists of the two kinds of the muscle, the longitudinal muscle and the circular muscle, which work very contractically to one another. That means whenever one contracts, the other relaxes, and when the other one relaxes, the first one contracts. This is how they work contradict to one another. So these are the four layers of the gut. After the esophagus, as the food enters into the stomach, it has to go through these all kinds of the layers of the gut. All right. After that, let's discuss about the functions of esophagus. In the process of digestion, esophagus is not included. However, it is a part of the digestive system. Esophagus helps us to connect the food particles from the mouth to the stomach. When you talk about the esophagus, esophagus is also included in a process that is known as the peristalsis. Peristalsis means the upward movement of the food particles. That is a movement of a circular wave that basically occurs whenever there is a contraction and a relaxation of the muscular layer that consists of the two muscles, that is the circular muscle and the longitudinal muscle. Whenever they contradicted one another, we say that peristalsis basically occur, and the anterior to the peristalsis we have the antiperistalsis, that is the movement towards the gravity, and that is processed in the digestion. For how much time does the stomach does the esophagus consist of the food particles? We said that it's almost 5 to 10 seconds in which the food is basically transported from the mouth to the stomach. Since the esophagus passes on the food from the mouth to the stomach, so thus we have the next part is the stomach. What is a stomach? Stomach is a muscular bag that we say consists of the three parts. The one is the cardiac, then we have the fundus, and then we have the pylorus. These are the three parts that are included in the stomach. The cardiac is the uppermost region that consists of a sphincter. Sphincter are the muscle of the layers that helps us basically open whenever the food enters. Then we have the fundus. Fundus is filled with all kinds of the gases in the stomach. Then the last part is known as the pylorus, and above the pylorus we have the antrum. The basic stomach body is known as the stomach body, that is below the fundus and above the antrum. So what is a stomach? A stomach is basically a distensible muscular organ, as it consists of the four layers that are muscular layers. It is present beneath the diaphragm. Diaphragm is present beneath the lungs. That helps us basically is a muscular one layer that helps us basically in the breathing. It is present below that, and it consists of the three major parts, that is the cardiac, that is the fundus, and that is the pyloric. All of them at the end of the each of the part where is a sphincter is present. The sphincter helps us to basically pass on the food particle into the another region basically, and this is the major function of the sphincter, and this is all you need to know about the stomach. Now let's talk about the functions of stomach. When you talk about the functions of stomach, it majorly secretes the HCl, it secretes pepsin, and it secretes the renin. HCl is a kind of receptor that basically helps to destroy all the microorganisms that are present in the stomach body, or we say above the antrum. Then we say, when we talk about the pepsin, pepsin is released in an inactive form, and it converted into an active form. Same goes with the renin, when all of these inactive form is converted into an active form with the help of HCl, that is termed as the hydrochloric acid. When you talk about the hydrochloric acid in detail, we say that it is slightly acidic in nature, as its pH is between the two. Then it destroys the salivary amylase and kills all the microorganisms. These are the three major secretions of the stomach: HCl, pepsin, and the renin. And the major function is of HCl, as it destroys and kills all the microorganisms that are present in the stomach, which is the major function of HCl. Now let's talk about the small intestine. Small intestine is almost 6 meter long. It is again a hollow tube, just like an esophagus, and it consists of the three subparts, that is the duodenum, jejunum, and the ileum. The first part is the duodenum, then we have the jejunum, and the last part is the ileum, where the absorption takes place. So duodenum is the most smallest part, and it is a U-shaped structure that is basically the opening of the small intestine. When you study small intestine, you also need to have some information about some important parts that are linked with the small intestine, that is the gallbladder and the pancreas. The gallbladder and pancreas basically conveys the secretions that we make by through our duct. That, if, for example, if you talk about the gallbladder, so gallbladder consists of a duct that is known as the bile duct, and pancreas secretes the pancreatic juice through a pancreatic duct that both then drains together and forms a common hepatic duct that basically drains into the duodenum part of the small intestine. When you talk about the pancreas, it secretes a pancreatic juice that basically consists of trypsin, amylase, and the lipase. This is the connection that we have the small intestine, the gallbladder, and the pancreas that drains their secretion through the ducts of the and then forms a common duct that is known as the common hepatic ducts and drains them into the part of the small intestine that is known as the duodenum. Since we have just talked about the pancreatic juice, let's talk about the how the pancreas basically appears. So it is a leaf-like gland. It looks somewhat like this. And this is a leaf-like gland that basically secretes the pancreatic juice that is conveyed to the duodenum through pancreatic duct. The pancreatic duct conveys the pancreatic juice that consists of the trypsin, lipase, and the amylase. Other than that, it is also included in the insulin that basically is responsible for controlling the blood sugar level. Just like the pancreas, we're going to talk about the liver and the gallbladder. So when you talk about the liver, it is the largest gland of the body. It consists of a certain lobes, that almost all 5 lobes that it consists of. The 3 are on the right side and the 2 are on the left side. It secretes a secretion that is known as the bile. Bile is yellowish green in color. It is very alkaline in nature, and it is an emulsified solution of a fat. That's why it is appear as the white and the yellowish green solution. When you talk about the blood vessels that drains into the liver, we say that it is an hepatic vein, we say it is an hepatic artery and hepatic portal vein. These are the blood vessels that basically conveys the blood into the liver and the gallbladder. After covering the parts of the digestive system, and since we have talked about the, we were on the large intestine, then we are going to talk about the balanced diet. What is a balanced diet? Balanced diet is a sort of a diet that basically includes the constant properties of all sorts of the constituents that are needed to be included in the balanced diet. For example, carbohydrate, fats, vitamins, minerals, water, and the roughage. Roughage means the fiber, the dietary fiber that basically includes the undigested fibrous material. And the person who lacks that can also be a patient of the constipation. And then that what is the purpose of balanced diet is that basically it forms a basal metabolism. Metabolism is the working of your body that is the processing of the catabolic and the anabolic reactions that are basically taking place in your body. That depends on the major factors of the climate, body, age, size, and health. And each of the basal metabolism refers from the one body to another. What happens when the balanced diet is not taken properly? We say that the condition is known as the starvation, where the amount of energy required is not fulfilled by the balanced diet or by the diet that is taken place by the patient. We said the patient is starved, that is the muscle wasting is happening, and the weakness is a cause of the not taking in the balanced diet. This is what the balanced diet basically mean, and this plays a very vital function in the performance of the body and its vital functions. One of the most important vital component of the balanced diet is the water. When you talk about the water, basically water is the major solvent for all the reactions that are taking place in the body, and the body at least needs 2 to 3 liters of the water. That is, we say that 8 glasses of water at least per day. What is that? The water is basically the medium for all the reactions, or you can say it is performed as the solvent for all sort of the reactions that are taking place in the body, whether they are catabolic or anabolic or any other sort of the reactions. Other than that, water plays part in the help in the transport. Water is the medium of the entire body that it plays a very important part in the transport. Other than that, it will also take part in the hydrolytic reaction. The reactions that includes the water quantity to be present itself is known as the hydrolytic reactions. Then it is a very important constituent of the photosynthesis, as photosynthesis is the process of food making in the plant that require water in a very high quantity. Then we say that it attains the body temperature that is termed as the homeostasis. When you talk about the homeostasis, it is the maintenance of body temperature and the other constituent that are responsible for the vital function. We said that water plays a very important role in that, as it helps in maintaining the body temperature. After the water, the very other vital component that we require for a balanced diet is known as the carbohydrate. Carbohydrate can be appear as a mono, di, or a poly depending upon the type of the carbons that are present in the each carbohydrate. It's termed as a hydrated carbon. That means the hydrated form of the carbons are present in the carbohydrate. That is a basic source of energy. We said that the carbohydrate is a very important source of energy for the body. The common examples of carbohydrate include the starch, cellulose, and the sugar. What is the normal formula when we say whenever we are using carbohydrate? We say that the normal formula is CnH2ON. It includes water in itself and the number of carbons depending upon whether it is a mono or di or a poly. Okay. Let's talk about the functions of carbohydrate. When you talk about the functions of carbohydrate, the four major functions is the source of energy. Since it is included in the balanced diet, thus that means that it is a vital function for the source of energy. Then it also supports the cell wall. Carbohydrate makes up the cell wall. It also provides the support. Other than that, it forms the nucleic acid that contains all the DNA and all the genetic information, and it also secretes the mucus that is very important for all kinds of the reactions that are taking place in the body. Another very important and a vital component that is required by the balanced diet is the protein. Protein is very important component of the body and it appears in two types of the form, that is the primary and the secondary. When we talk about the primary structure of protein, it is a straight chain structure. That means the carbon are arranged in a straight manner. But when you talk about the secondary, it means the spiral kind structure is present or a coiled up kind of structure is present. Other structures of protein like quaternary and other forms of the structures are also present. But majorly primary and the secondary structures are present that consist of the hydrogen bond within themselves. When you talk about the quaternary structure, it basically consists of a 3D shaped structure that helps us recognize that this is a quaternary structure. So the major kinds of the structure that a protein has is the primary, secondary, and the tertiary. But what happens if the balanced diet does not include the protein? So the protein deficiency is basically a very worsened case in the and can cause several diseases. For example, kwashiorkor or meniscus, or it can also cause certain other diseases. For example, rickets in children. So protein is responsible for majorly for the growth of the human body or the human tissues that are present in the cell of the human body. The major functions of the protein includes the weakness. If the balanced diet does not include the correct proportion of protein, we say the body is tend to be weak. When we say that the patient loses the mass of the muscle, the stimulated height is basically paused, the skin becomes scaly and dry, and the abdomen basically swells up. These are all the conditions that are basically taking place in a patient whenever there is a lack of the protein in the balanced diet. The last macro component that are responsible for the balanced diet is the vitamin. Vitamin is not considered as the macro component. Basically, it is considered as the micronutrient, which is required in a small quantity, but it is required in very much quantity. This is something that is not made up by the human body. It is taken by an external source of energy, which is responsible for the growth and the development. So there are two types of the vitamins. Either it is a fat-soluble vitamin or in water-soluble vitamin. When you talk about the fat-soluble vitamin, that means that it includes fat in itself. And when you talk about the water-soluble vitamin, it means that it includes the H2 in itself. Alright, so let's talk about each of them in detail. So the fat-soluble vitamins are basically made of the lipids, and it is in a stored form. So the body can store basically all sorts of the fat-soluble vitamin. For example, vitamin D. Vitamin D is basically consumed by the body and then stored by the body. And when you talk about the water-soluble vitamins basically mean, as we know, that most of our body is made up of the water. Thus, it is dissolved into the water and it cannot be stored. The water-soluble vitamins cannot be stored in the body. They always get dissolved into it because the medium itself consists of the water. For example, vitamin C. So these are the basic functions of the vitamins and the basic kinds of the vitamins that are present in our body. Before we end our topic, I want to talk about one of the very common diseases that occurs whenever there is a lack of vitamin C, that is known as the scurvy. What happens in scurvy is that there are swollen gums and the bleeding is very common on whenever the person or the patient brushes or eats something. The teeth loses and are very tending to be fall out. The internal bleeding can occur inside the body, and poor healing bonds. Whenever a patient suffers from any kind of a wound, it is very unable to be healed because of the lack of the vitamin C. Or very painful joint. The patient's joint would be very painful. He would be having pain in his joint very commonly. These are the major and the vital requirements whenever the vitamin C is not present in our body. This is what the patient basically goes through, and this disease is known as the scurvy. So we are done with the chapter and we have revised the entire chapter. We're going to start the new chapter in the next video. Thank you for watching.